How's it going, guys? It is Plastic Disasta, and it is October. You know what that means? It means it's spooky month. And you know what's really scary? Villains. And what kind of villains we're talking about? Gundam villains. I mean, villains are pretty scary, right? Well, anyways, the first villain we're going to take a look at is the high-grade Universal Sentry, Qubeley from the anime Zeta Gundam. Now, what makes this thing so scary? Well, it's white, so it kind of resembles a ghost, and you have a bunch of funnels flying at you, and if you're a ground mobile suit, well, you're screwed. And now that I've already explained the box art, let's move on to the other side. Looking at this side of the box, we have the front and rear shot of the kit. We have it in its action poses and a nice gimmicks. And finally, moving on this side of the box, we see a nice CG render of the Qubeley going after the HGUC. Now, before I open this, it is kind of a thick box, so just expect like big pieces. Alright, now taking a look inside the box, we are greeted with 4 bags of runners and a manual. Looking at the cover of the manual, here is a studio shot of the Qubeley that is all painted and detailed up. Bragging over inside the manual, it looks like we have more information on the Qubeley. I know it's in Japanese, but you can look it up on the wiki. Looking at the parts list, looks like we're going to be using almost all of it. When I mean by almost, I mean that one little polycat that we're not going to use. Looking at the back of the manual, we have an action shot and a rear shot of the Qubeley, showing off its gimmicks, a familiar CG render, and right down here is a color guide if you're planning on painting it. Starting off with runner A1 is going to be the white parts, and I don't know if you can see this because if you have this in your hands, the parts do look kind of glossy. 2 runner Bs, more white parts. Runner C1 and C2 are going to be the dark gray frame parts, and C2 is going to be a copy of this section. Runners D1 and D2 is going to be the dark pink parts, while I have runner D2 is going to be a copy of this section. Runner E1 is going to be the blue parts, while I have runner E2 is going to be a darker magenta color, but if you put these two together, you can see that it could go as a multicolored runner, but it is separated. Yellow beam saber effect parts, small sticker sheet, and a small polycap runner. So that's going to be it for the unboxing. I am really excited to put this together. Now, I am aware that there is an older Qubeley kit. I don't have it, so I can't make the comparison. And what I also forgot to tell you is that this is a revived version. And for those who don't know the revived term for Gunpla, it's basically like a brand new mold. It's kind of like remaking the kit, but for modern standards. We're talking about better color separation, better engineering, and let's hope this kit brings us that. So, I'll see you guys after the build. And here is the Qubeley all put together. And I have to say, I was amazed when I put this kit together. And about the engineering, yeah, it is that good. I mean, look at the color separation of this kit. I mean, I could just leave this alone and call it done. That is how good the out-of-box presentation is. And for a high grade, it is kind of heavy. I'll give it that. As for proportions, I'd say they nailed it when you're comparing this model to the anime. Moving on to seam lines, the ones you have to deal with is the one on the torso, and if it does bother you, there is one on the shoulder, but it is going to be covered up by these white flaps. There is one seam line on the abs, but that could go as a detail, and there's one right here on the forearm that could go as a detail. But on the back of the forearm, that is a seam line right here. A little bit tricky. This should be a seam line, but it could go as a detail. And finally, this is another seam line, but again, it could go as a detail. Moving on to stickers, starting off with the eyes, you have the choice of either black and pink or black and green. I don't know what the green eye is for, but if you guys know, comment down below. And finally, these small 8 pink stickers, they go onto this part of the shoulder, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and 4 on each side. So that's about it for the out-of-box presentation, and it went a little quicker than I thought, but I'm going to work on this kit, and I will see you guys right after. Alright, after you put the work in, and here is what the Qubeley looks like. Now, if you notice, I did put pink behind those flaps. I actually used spray cans. I did not hand paint it. Because to me, I think it makes it a bit easier, and I also throw in a few water slide decals. And I gotta say, it looks even better when you put the work in. Alright, so moving on with accessories, starting off with hand options. The one is already on the kit would be the weapon holding hands. Next up, you have 2 open palm hands. Now, normally the kit would come like this. The fingers will move all together, they move up and down, and the thumb is on a ball joint. But if you do some modifications, you can have each finger move independently, which means I can finally do this.
Got it!
Oh yeah, and I forgot, the ball joint can swing forwards and backwards. Next up, you have 2 beam saber effect parts, and the beam saber handles are located onto the forearms. Now, if you guys want, you can pop in the beam saber effect part in, like Assassin's Creed style, or you can pop up the beam saber handle, and notice this little tab right here. You're gonna have to put it into this tiny little slot on the weapon holding hands, just to make sure it goes in very well and it's not going anywhere. And for the final accessory, if you move on to the backpack, you get these little funnels. Now, unfortunately, they do not plug into the 3mm peg because of how small the holes are. Now, if I remember correctly, there is a P Bandai set where it comes with these funnel effect parts where you can have these guys whooshing around. Moving on with articulation, the head is on a ball joint, but there is a neat gimmick that if you lift the head up, it reveals a neck, so you can have it flying upwards. Now, onto the shoulders, starting off these flaps, these are nicely articulated. They can flap forward and backwards. There's rotation right here, another one right here, and another one right here. And with these articulated flaps, it will allow you to do another gimmick, which it folds down. Right, moving forward with the shoulder, there is a ball joint right there, and it can go up this far. Now, on my copy, the arm pops up a little too easy, but that's no big deal. That's an easy fix. But the arm can go that high. You do have a bicep rotation right here, and you have another rotation on the forearms. Elbow bend is at 90 degrees, even though it's a double jointed bend. Alright, so I had to pop up the hand for a second just to show you this little gimmick on the wrist that you pull this pink piece out. Is like a little wrist armor. And of course, the wrist is on a ball joint. Moving on to a torso, there is this one cool gimmick that high grades don't have, is that if you move this pink piece up, it's like you're opening the cockpit. You do get a little bit of an ab crunch. As for backward movements, you do get a lot, and a bit of side to side movement. Well, actually, there is a ball joint right over here, and of course you get a waist swivel. Front skirt moves out, side skirt moves out, does a bit of rotation, and as for a back skirt, well, it's kind of non-existent because it's one big side skirt. The leg can kick up this far, can move back that far, which is actually pretty good, and it can do a full split. And due to design, you get a limited waist swivel, double bend at the knee. The armor can move up and down. As for the feet, it is on a ball joint. It can move up this far a little bit, move back far, well, not a lot, and you also get a toe bend. As for pivot, and it's only a little bit. Finally, moving on to the backpack, it can only move up and down. Overall, the articulation is good, but not great, which is kind of funny for a Revive kit. I just wish it could be better in some areas. Moving on with size comparisons, here it is right next to the standard size RX 782, and man, it towers over it. And if you're concerned about the shelf space, well, look how wide this kit is. It takes up like 3 standard size mobile suits. Next up, here is the Qubeley right next to some of the Zeta mobile suits, the Zeta Gundam, and the Gundam Mark II. Now, height-wise, the Zeta Gundam and the Qubeley are kind of the same, and as for the Gundam Mark II, well, it is the same height as the standard Gundam. Now, sadly, I don't have the Hyakushiki or the O, because if I do, they would all look great together. Now, I do have the double Zeta, but I haven't built him yet, so stay tuned for that. And finally, here's the Qubeley right next to Optimus Prime and Godzilla. I feel like those big shoulder flaps are not helping me with the size comparisons, but let's move on to my final thoughts. Alright, so moving on to my final thoughts. Overall, I still say it's a good kit, but not a great kit. Now, like I already mentioned, I know there is an old Qubeley kit, but I'm pretty sure this Revive kit is a massive improvement. The accessories is what it is. It's got great color separation and pretty nice engineering, but the articulation could have been so much better. But I'd still recommend this kit if you're like a Zeta fan, or even if you're not a Qubeley fan, I still would give this kit a shot because it is pretty good. Alright, so that's gonna be it for review. I want to say thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are new here, consider subscribing. Any questions, concerns, comment down below. Leave a like. I'll see you guys in the next video. Now, even though I don't have the HGUC, but I think this is close enough.